If all bottle episodes took as much care, love, and heart as this third episode of The Last of Us did, I don't know if that would be such a negative connotation to say the bottle episode. But I'm going to give you my thoughts and reactions to the third episode of The Last of Us right after the jump. Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. If you haven't already, go ahead, like, share, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. So the third episode of Last of Us is a departure. It's a departure from what we've seen so far in the series. It's a departure from anything that happened in the game with these same characters. And It is the first time in this entire series where the game was just sort of a launch pad or just put these characters on the board, and this completely fleshed out and did something completely different with them. For the better. For those of you who don't know, a bottle episode is typically an episode, for the most part, it's typically an episode where either A, they didn't have the budget, a script fell through, and we're going to do cheap sets and we're going to all take place in this one location, and the storyline doesn't really progress or do anything of that nature. It can also be where we take only 2 or 3 characters and just raise them up for dramatic effect, where we give them more dialogue, emotional content, and just create more weight, while the story A that is typically happening isn't progressing or going anywhere. This is more the latter than it is the former. And so a lot of this episode is spent without Joel and Ellie, which is an interesting choice. And it sort of creates a new storyline to give a little bit more weight to a lot of the connection that Joel and Ellie have in the game is built on the moments when you're killing clickers. You can see how when they kill stuff together, where they're in these precarious positions, the thing that puts them together or makes them feel closer happens because of the perilous things that they're in. In the show, they don't go through nearly as much as they did back to back to back to back in the game because it's not an action game. And so for that, this whole sort of story was created to show, hey, at the very end of it, Joel, maybe you should be a protector and a better person. And that's kind of the full circle moment of what this episode does. First thing that I put in my notes at the very beginning is that there is no prologue or nothing before the credits. It goes straight to the credits on this one, which the first 2 episodes have done something where we looked at the past. And I was like, oh, well, that's odd. I put a note of that. I'm like, well, we'll come back to that. Seeing the entire episode, I now know why they didn't. The entire episode is in the past, but that is why it did not come before the first. But it took me off guard at the beginning, and then I'm like, oh well, now this makes sense. We get a sort of a tag note that that Joel and Ellie have made it 10 miles west of Boston on their road to find a Firefly station, sort of drop Ellie off and hand her off so they can find a cure. You can tell that in this time there has been some tension that has grown between the two of them. I guess Joel has given off resentment towards Ellie, and Ellie has felt a way about it. And so we just get a moment where she's like, look, you and Tess made a choice to go get your battery. You want to go do some stuff. I just need you not to take out the fact that Tess is gone out on me. Like, I had nothing to do with that. Don't put that mess on me. And Joel doesn't really respond, but it sinks in a little bit. He kind of has to get hit over the head. It's like, she's not wrong. And then he lets you know that we have about 5 hours to our destination. They continue on for their walk. And on this walk, it's pretty interesting. She is like a 5-year-old child. Like, why? Asking questions consistently. But what you find out is that if you answer them honestly, she kind of is like, oh, that's cool to know. You have to think about it and remember that Ellie is a girl who came post the world. She's born post the world falling apart. So simple things like seeing airplanes and what they did and how you rode on the planes or cars and all that stuff is new to her. She has no idea, no rational thought of how any of that actually works. So if it's not something that she can study in the library, she's never actually been into any type of thing. So she's just very inquisitive, as a young person should be. There is a running bit throughout this entire episode where she just keeps asking for that gun. And she's like, hey, look, it's just the 2 of us now. You might want to give me that gun. And it just pops up quite a few times. But Joel's like, no. The 2 of them make their way to this old store. that is familiar for folks from the video game. But it's a store where he has stored some products and some supplies that he needs to go and check in. Now, he doesn't remember where the hell he put his supplies. It's been that long since he's been in there, but he knows that they are there. And it's sort of a safe spot for him. Ellie looks around the place a little bit. She's like, well, I'm going to go search for some other things. She's like, look, this place has been run through all the time. And so she finds a little hatch down below and just a little bit of scavenging on her own. She finds some tampons and she's like, cool, that's a score. I'm going to win, take that. She also runs into an infected that's down in the basement. Luckily, this infected is trapped, can't move. And so she gets inquisitive mode again because she is a kid, as a child. And she just stares at it for a little bit. And she's having the knife track its eye to see if it's still motor function enough to kind of the eyeball moves with the knife. Then she cuts it open a little bit to see if it bleeds. And it doesn't. It really just kind of opens up. A little bit of dry blood comes out and the fungus sort of opens. And he's like, cool, I've done my science project autopsy with you. I'm now stabbing you and killing you. She returns to Joel and they take off. Joel finally finds the stuff that he has. He puts the big gun, the Gatling gun, sort of machine gun that he had, away because he's like, I don't have the ammo for this. And he stores that away, and then they continue on their journey. On that journey, we learn, see about the plane. She's asking questions about the scar that he has, and all this, how good he is in a gunfight, and blah blah blah, yak yak yak. Things that a kid would ask an older man. That kind of just like to be like, hey, you know this, and get some type of knowledge from Joel. I think what works between them is that Joel is very honest, sometimes a little too honest, and she doesn't even appreciate that. She's like, you don't lie to me. You're too truthful. And then they come upon a spot where there's like a fork in the road where Joel's like, hey, I want to go this way, as opposed to going that way. And she's like, well, isn't this way faster? Like, wouldn't this make more sense? And she's like, yes, but there's something I don't want you to see over there. And she's like, well, now I want to see that. And this is where it gets pretty sad. She winds up going to that section. There's a spot where you see a bunch of bones and bodies and paraphernalia and like guitars and stuff of people who have been killed. And then all this, Joel tells her the story of how everything went to shit in 2003. She's inquisitive about how did this all begin. Was it from a monkey bite? He's like, nope. Went from flour, people were eating flour, then it descended in about by the weekend, everything was bedlam. So then the military started coming through and collecting people, and they were going to move them to a QZ. And yes, the QZ did exist. That wasn't necessarily a lie. But if the QZ was full and they had no more room, this is what they did with them. They just laid their bodies out here and they killed them. And she's like, well, why do they have to kill them? Like, they could have just left them there. And he brings up a very good point. Dead people, dead bodies, can't become infected. So kill them because we never have to worry about these folks turning. So it's a tragic moment. It's a tragic scenario that, like, yeah, these people still had lives, so that they were with their kids. Some of them were kids, but we just didn't have the room for them. So because we can't protect you, and because we don't want you to turn, our best case scenario is to just murder you all. Whew, that's heavy. We then get a flash out and we leave Joel and Ellie for a while. And we head to 2003 when going through those military places, we're going through and finding homes and finding people and collecting them and like marking off homes like this place has been searched, all clear, moving on to the next spot. And basically leaving this world desolate and empty. Except for one nice person down below. You got Bill, who is a survivalist of all survivalists. And he's in his bunker with weaponed out as if apparently that he got the note about Terminator 2 Judgment Day. And he's like, well, it's coming and I'm going to be ready for it. So he's seeing the cameras. He's watching everything. He is good to go for something like this to occur. And once they leave, he comes out, checks his surroundings, sees that coast is clear. He's good. And he's like, he basically like, I'm built for this. And he starts going and grabbing gas while he can, storing up. He has a generator. He goes to Home Depot. He builds a fence. He basically has put himself like, well, I'm in survival mode now, and I'm here by myself. I mean, he is perfectly fine. He is happy as all happy can be. He's like, I can live this world. I can do this all day. This is great. He's built traps, basically Home Alone his place so that If any, in fact, it does show up, he'll get an alarm, get a notice, and then he'll set up a booby trap that'll take him out. Like, he is built for this. And he doesn't need anything else in his life. He's a great cook. He cooks for himself. He hunts his own meal, pours him some wine. He's got a whole wine cellar and a whole wine setup that he's good. There's nothing that can affect Bill and his day-to-day operation. And he's good like this. For 4 years, it's just him in his home doing his day-to-day things, and he's perfectly fine. We then get a flash forward of 4 years. And the 4 years have passed. He gets another alarm that something is happening. He sees like a hole in the ground on his camera. So he set up a trap that something would fall into it. He goes out to see what's in the trap, and he finds Frank. Frank falls into his lap, or into his trap, in his lap. And Frank immediately says, "I'm not bitten." He has a tester. I'm telling you, Bill is about that life. He is ready. He has a tester to test him. He's not infected. And he gets him out of the trap, gives him the ladder, says, "Cool, you can head out to Boston. Boston's that way." And Frank sort of is like, "Hey, can I get a shower or a meal or something before I head off?" And Bill obliges, reluctantly, but he obliges. Frank takes a shower. Bill cooks for him. They have a great meal. And then in that, Frank heads to the piano that his mother gave Bill. And he sees the piano. He pulls out this Linda Ronstadt music book that sort of has I guess, a lot of her songs and whatnot in it. Long, Long Time, which is the title of this episode, is one of the songs that he begins to play poorly. But he gets to play. You could tell that hearing music, doing that, gave him a sense of life. It's clear that Frank is a wanderer, but he is searching. He has found something here that kind of gave him a sense of life. And in that, Bill does too. And Bill's like, "Hold on, stop. You're butchering it." And he starts playing. And he plays and sings, and you can tell that he got super emotional. He felt whatever he was feeling or whatever he was saying in that song, he felt, and had never really been able to verbalize that feeling to anybody before. And I believe there were some notes that Frank had sort of picked up on things to sort of understand where and who Bill truly was. But Frank asked, like, "Hey, who's the lucky girl that you're singing that to? Like, who's the girl that you're singing that to?" And Bill responds that there is no girl. And Frank says, "I know." As at that point, that was sort of the signal that they both are aware that each other is gay. And in a world where you have no chance of finding any type of love, everybody's dead, trying to kill you, or you're going to end up alone. You finally had somebody that you can talk to your day to day, fall right into your lap. And they end up together making love. And what was supposed to be a quick, "Yep, cool, you're going to be out in a couple of days," ends up being another flash forward for a few years. So 3 years pass from that time, and Bill and Frank are arguing like a married couple. They're out in the street. Bill is very much a survivalist, like, "Keep everything in house. My job is to protect you. We don't need to be out in the street. This is what I'm about." There's a fun joke about saying that the military is all, the government is all a conspiracy and all of this stuff. And Bill's like, "Well, they are." He's like, "Yeah, they are now, but they weren't in the past." That's funny. It played really well. But it's clear that their ideologies about life are very different. Frank is very much just wandering, seeking other people. He still wants to be around people. And while he loves Bill, he still wants to interact with other people. He lets Bill know that I have been talking on the phone, on his radio with this woman, and they're coming by for dinner. And Bill's like, "Wait, what? What are you talking about?" So then we have a scene where Bill, Tess, Frank, and Joel are all eating dinner on the front lawn. It's funny because Bill has a gun at Joel, pointing a gun the whole time. He doesn't trust him. He's not like looking forward to him. He's like, "Nope, keeping this gun on you." But Tess and Frank are having a ball. She's like, "Yeah, come on into the house. I want to show you this and that." And Bill's kind of like, "I'm just keeping this gun on Joel." And Joel's like, "I get it. I'd be right there with you. But I'm going to tell you something. You need to take the damn gun off me, and we can talk about what type of deals we can make, because I'm bartering. We can become a team. This is your safe haven. I'm not going to interrupt in that, but there's some things that you can get. There's some things that I can get for you that I think together will sort of be a good tandem." Bill is very much like, I can do this by myself. I don't need you. I'm good. And Joel's like, yeah, that fence you got around there might last one more year. I can get you the tin in the foil, the coils to kind of make this a lifelong thing. And so an unusual partnership is formed. They head off, and then you see Tess and Frank sort of coming up with this code, the code that we all sort of know now. It's like, all right, get into trouble, this and that. We hear it in the background while Joel and Bill are kind of having their conversations. As they head off, Joel does say, "Hey, look, real quick, you're going to be protected from the infected. They're not coming around here, but in a few years, you're going to start seeing raiders come around, and I don't know if this place is as protected for that as it should be." And Bill's like, "No, we good. I got this." Then flash forward another 3 years, and they're getting older. They're going on a run, but they're doing the married couple life. What's cool about this is you get to see an entire relationship start, finish, and subsequently end in one episode amongst an outbreak happening. And for people to find love in this is just it's very heartfelt. It's a very heartfelt situation. But 3 years have passed. They're going on a run, and Frank has a surprise for Bill. He's made some strawberry patch for them that that he bartered a gun, one of Bill's mini guns, to Joel to get seeds for. And they have strawberries. You can tell that like they haven't had a strawberry in so long, especially a fresh strawberry that they actually just grew. But obviously, fresh fruit and veggies don't exist in this world anymore. And so they, unless you have the seeds, but they had that moment. And Bill says to Frank, "I'm sorry that I'm getting old. I'm sorry that I'm getting older than you." And it's a pretty beautiful moment in it. In that, the biggest line or takeaway that you take from that is that Bill tells Frank, "I was never afraid before. I was never afraid before you showed up. Now I have something to care about. He has something to live for now." It's a lot like when either parents have kids or a person who was single all their life finds a mate. Bill was perfectly fine being the survivalist, sort of quasi nut job, going through the motions of life. But now Frank is sort of giving him something else to live for, and also a fear of something to lose, and that's pretty powerful. And based on the note that sort of comes in at the end, it's kind of what he wants. He wants for Joel. Joel was right. Those raiders did attack at night, and everything seems to be working. Fires going off and whatnot. And Bill's handling his own. He's shooting them up. Everything is going well until Frank sort of wakes up in the middle of the night, goes down, and tries to get Bill's attention to come back inside, and unfortunately distracts him enough that he ends up getting shot. He brings Bill inside and starts caring for his wound, which makes me think we don't really get too much information on Frank's what he did, but there has to be some type of doctor or some type of he at least studied this type of stuff because he knew exactly how to get the bullet out of the wound and all of that stuff. He also later knows what drug to take and how much to take necessarily to end life. So there's something in the medical field that I feel like Frank was a part of. But Frank does get the bullet out, and while on his what he believes is to be he perceives to be his deathbed, Bill says, "Hey, call Joel." Because he feels like in this moment, I am no longer going to be here to protect you, but I need to have somebody. I have somebody in place that can call Joel. He can protect you now, which is another emotional heartstring moment when you're like, even while you're sick and dying and maybe think you're not going to be here anymore, your first concern is, hey, I need to get somebody in place to make sure that you're okay. Love. I'm a softie. We get another time jump. 10 years pass and they are older. They are some older gentlemen now. Bill is still alive. Frank is not doing well. He's in a wheelchair, and it's clearly some type of degenerative disease that's happening to him that's just basically shutting his body down. Frank has put forth this entire sort of idea of like, hey, this is going to be my last day. I'm not continuing on anymore. I'm in pain. I'm a burden. Here's what we're going to do. I need you to, we're going to go out. We're going to go get some suits. We're going to go get married, get rings, get married. Then we're going to come back. You're going to cook a dinner. And then I'm going to get some wine. And then you're going to crush up these pills that I have to put me to sleep. forever. And you're going to take me to bed, and then I'm going to go to sleep in your arms and never wake up. And Bill obliges. And Bill goes through it. You can see them taking that last stroll down the street, talking, having conversations. You see them putting rings on each other's fingers. You see the dinner. See them drink their wine. And then you see Bill come to the dining room with 2 more glasses of wine and another bottle of wine. And he pours the wine, and then he puts the powder into Frank's cup. Frank chugs the wine. No more sipping of the wine anymore or tasting it. The day of tasting it when he first got to the land is very different than now. He is done. He's like, I've lived what I could live. I have nothing else to live for. I'm done here. He chugged that wine. But then so does Bill. Bill chugs the wine as well. At that point, Frank realizes that there's some already in the bottle. I was like, yeah. And it's this way that he wants to go with him. And he's like, this isn't some tragic suicide. This isn't what that is. You were my purpose. And if you're not here, then I don't have the purpose anymore. I'm satisfied. Like if you are going, my partner is going, I also too want to go. Ah, you sons of... None of this is in the game. You sons of bitches. They then head off into the bed, and that is the last that we see of Bill and Frank. Before I get into the back end of what this episode is, let me tell you what the video game does with these characters. We never see Frank in the video game. We are alluded to Frank through either messages or like magazines or notes that are around. We are alluded. Bill's sexuality isn't really out there on Front Street, but it is known that like, hey, he lived with a man. It's clear that a lot of the notes that Frank wrote that he just was like, I'm done. I'm disgusted with you. F you, Bill. Like they argued, but not more so just like that one scene that was at when he came out the house. That was sort of a norm for them. It seemed like they had that going on, but it didn't quite put in the fine print that they were a couple. But there was a gay porn magazine that Ellie found that kind of put the writing on the wall. But we never see Frank. And we don't see Frank because the way this sort of happens in the game is that Joel and Ellie abscond upon Bill's compound and are put into one of his traps. And Bill sees them and he releases them from the trap when he realizes that they're human. And they sort of create a bond there. They go get a battery, blah, 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 blah. Frank's already dead at this point. Frank's gone. And what we eventually see is that Frank went out to go do an errand, was bitten, and then instead of waiting for it all to come to fruition, he commits suicide. So you see a hanging body in Bill's place of just Frank. So you never actually get to meet Frank alive. And Bill does meet Ellie in the game. Clearly, none of that's happening here because Bill and Frank are both gone, whereas it was just Frank in the game, and Ellie never gets to meet either of them while they're alive. Massive change, very different. But why it's different and what the story sort of does to push our main 2 leads on, it works, comes together quite well. So we then see, after the death, we then see Joel and Ellie come to the compound. Joel knows the code to get in. They get in, they're looking around, but they don't see anything. Joel doesn't see anything. No one's answering. And then Ellie finds a letter that is written to whomever, but probably Joel, with a key next to it. And in the letter, we find that he's given them a note that says, yes, we've taken our lives. We've ended it. We are blocked ourselves in the room, and you should not come in here because it's probably not going to be a pretty sight. But we did open up the window so that it does not smell in here, so that you can come in here and do what it is you have to do. Bill also says, yeah, I never liked you. Nah, we got along. I respected you, but I never liked you. And I would imagine that you didn't like me either. but I know who you are because we're very much the same person. It also tells you really that he didn't really like himself until Frank came along. That's an important note there. But he basically says that Joel, you need to find that one person that's worth saving. Like you and I are the same. When you find that one person that's worth saving, you will become a vicious protector. You were fine being this loner, this lone wolf, but when you find that person, you need to hold on to them and protect them and do whatever you have to protect them. And that's what we are. And if I feel bad for anybody who gets in the way of you not protecting, in the letter, it's in relation to Tess. Like he wrote about Tess because that's all he knew. He never met Ellie. And so it seemed like, oh yeah, this makes sense. Yeah, he's talking about Ellie, and he's like, crap, nope, it's about Tess, which he failed to protect. So this now kind of gives Joel a moment to say, hey, maybe I can have that. Maybe I should have that connection with Ellie. Maybe she is who I should be protecting. I should be saving. I should put all my energy into her to basically give your life a purpose. Joel has not had a purpose since Sarah died. And so this was kind of if Joel and Bill are the same person, and Bill said, I don't like you, but we are the same. Bill was that honorary, everything's falling apart, but he let himself fall in love with Frank. If Joel can allow himself to love Ellie, I think maybe some of that heartbeat and that soul protector will come to fruition. I'm probably the only one, and for my gamers, you got it too. When you saw that fantastic detergent on the washer, kind of giggled a little bit and smiled. They gear up. Joel and Ellie do gear up. They take showers. Finally, Ellie puts on the red shirt. She puts on the classic Last of Us game red shirt, which I'm like, she's in Ellie mode now. That's her. And then we start to have a moment where they go over some rules, the ground rules. Joel sets ground rules for her, and the 3 rules are this: don't ever bring up Tess again. I don't want to hear about Tess. I don't want you to. You know what? Don't bring up Tess, and let's not talk about our histories ever again. We don't have to do that. 2, never show anybody that bite, because there's going to be people who don't understand it. They're going to try to shoot you on sight. They're not going to take the time to understand that when you got that or how long it's been. They're just going to shoot. 3, just do whatever I say. Do as I say at all times. And these rules are set because Joel has decided that, hey, I'm going to bring you along. Got a battery, it's charging up, got a car. I'm going to go find my brother. He used to be a Firefly. So if I can get him with you, he can probably get you to the other Fireflies that can put you in the direction that you need to go to get towards this cure. Give yourself. You now have a set of purpose. My purpose is now to kind of protect you. That's sort of what this is. But he's like, I'm keeping you with me. I'm going to continue on with you. The 2 get in the car, and mind you, this is Ellie's first time being in a car, so she's just in awe. It's cute because Joel's being protected. He says, hey, put on your seatbelt. And she has no idea what the hell a seatbelt is. He has to put it on her and tell her and say it so that she understands. Because remember, again, this poor thing has never been in one of these. And they take off and ride off into the sunset. Listening to a tape of Linda Ronstadt that Bill had in the car of Long Time. And as they're pulling off with Long Time playing, we zoom out on the open window from the bedroom of Bill and Frank. Well, that's an emotional gut punch. If you're going to do bottle episodes, make them as artful, beautiful, and well done as this. And I won't complain about the progressing of the story not happening, because this was stunning. And I think it is really cool that they were able to take just the idea of Bill and Frank and flesh it out to this big concept, but that still sort of led to propelling who Joel and Ellie's future relationship is going to be. We got to see an actual relationship from start to finish to end in this epidemic, which we don't get in the game. Some of this stuff is just inferred, some of it's there, but to actually take the time to hey, we got moments. Let's take a moment to let that breathe to see how it all start, finish, and end. It was stunning. It was beautiful. Kudos to Nick Offerman and Murray Bartlett. we'll never see them again, but those characters are going to kind of sit with a lot of people for a long time. It's just a wonderfully done episode. Um, I wish there was more to say that how good Bill and Frank are in the game. Again, Frank's gone, and Bill we just see in a brief moment. So there is way more context in this episode than anything that we got in the game, and I do hope. While I'm appreciative of them following, for the most part, everything that has been happening thus far, I'm glad that we can take a moment every now to surprise me. I think that is what elevates what I already thought was a really good series. It elevates it even more. Like, hey, sometimes you can knock me on my ass. In this episode, knock me on my ass. What did you guys think about this episode of The Last of Us called Long, Long Time? Go leave your thoughts and comments in the comments below. If you haven't already, go ahead and follow us on Twitter at HollywoodADI. You can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. We also have a podcast with the same name that's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere the place podcasts. We're there. And like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.